man, we have more people kind of. First I want to say hello, everybody. If you don't know me, my name is Blaine Allen. I'm an engineer here in the Rio Grande Valley. Before this, I'm I was a strato tanker mechanic. Today we're going to talk a little bit about IFT-5 or Integrated Flight Test 5. And by the way, if you've never been to a talk with me, I really don't like when people stand up in front of me and just go through all their slides. I really like when things are quite more like a dialogue. So if you have something that you want to say, or you have a question, please let me know. I really want to hear what you guys have to say as well. So flight test 5 will be very, very different than the previous 4 flight tests, namely because there will actually be a similarity to some of these flight tests, which are that in these flight tests, stuff actually came back. And so it's kind of an excitement of whether or not the infrastructure back here at Starbase would be damaged or not. And that is exactly the risk that we run with this next flight test. By the way, by a show of hands, who has actually been out to Starbase before? All right, cool. So fantastic. So if you haven't been, about 20 miles away from here is a launch pad, a factory to make starships, and part of that launch pad is a launch integration tower. And this next launch is going to be especially unique in that we have these 2 vehicles, ship number 30 and booster number 12. The ship stacks on top of the booster, in case you're not aware. The booster gets liftoff initially past the period of maximum dynamic pressure, and then pushes the Starship vehicle out into orbit, onto its mission. Ship 30, which is really the spaceship, will be continuing around into the Indian Ocean. However, booster 12 will do something quite unique. Has anyone ever seen the Falcon 9 boosters that come and land on drone ships? I think most of us by now have seen those clips online and in the news. This will be very, very similar, except there's a huge difference in scale. The Falcon 9 booster is really quite small in comparison to the Starship, and the Starship doesn't have legs. So what I mean by that is the legs of a booster are about 10% of the mass of the vehicle itself. And so because what they're trying to do is fly and then land and then fly and then land over and over and over again, it doesn't make much of a difference if you reduce 10% of the mass of the vehicle if you only do 10 flights. But if you aim for your vehicle to do 100 flights, 200 flights, that 10% adds up and matters a heck of a lot. So for a sense of scale, how big is a Starship and what are its launch capabilities? This room, I just measured this room about 3 weeks ago. This is about 25 feet across. In the room, does anybody know what the width of the Starship is?
9 meters.
Yes, Victor's right. It's 9 meters wide. 9 meters is about 30 feet. So for a scale of comparison, from about this point to that corner and up probably 7 feet is the volume of the vehicle that took us to the moon. There's the lunar lander in the Apollo missions. It was very, very small, but that was an incredibly large and powerful spacecraft. The Saturn V, which initially propelled that spacecraft out of Earth's gravity well, Starship is presently 2.5 times more powerful than that. The next revision starships will be about 3 times more powerful. But I'm often asked the question like, why does it matter if it's more powerful? Like, okay, you made the most powerful rocket. What does that have to do with anything? It matters quite a lot. It matters whether or not you can ferry an enormous cargo load or a very, very small cargo load. Now, if all of us think about sending something over the ocean in a little tugboat, that wouldn't be a very economical way to send very, very large things. That's why we have cargo ships. In a similar way, Starship is a cargo vessel that is unparalleled to any spacecraft in human history. If we take a look on the left here, this is a slightly outdated anatomy of a starship. The blue section represents the liquid oxygen portion of the ship. The white section on the left represents the liquid methane portion of the ship. And the red section represents the pressurized volume of the ship. In case you don't know, everybody knows what the International Space Station is, right? This giant, enormous laboratory that is currently orbiting around Earth and has been doing so for well over 20 years. And that space station has an internal pressurized volume of about 900 cubic meters. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I think of cubic meters, my brain just kind of farts. I have a really, really hard time comprehending that. It's a really, really big space. 900 cubic meters is the biggest space station that we have, period, in human history. Now, the question is, how large is this Starship in comparison? Anybody want to guess? Any kids, any numbers? 5 cubic meters, 12, 63, 420. 1,000 cubic meters is the current approximated pressurized volume. One Starship has a greater internal pressurized volume than the entire International Space Station combined of all of its modules. Now, if I don't know who here attended the talks that we've had in the last couple of weeks, but there is another thing that is built out here, which is not just a single Starship, but a factory that can make starships at economies of scale, just like a car factory makes 100,000 cars per year. This is the first spaceship factory that has ever existed on planet Earth. It's not operational fully yet, but it's going to be ramping and spooling in production. That factory is built and designed to manufacture 100 starships per year. Okay, so what are some key differences between this flight and the last? Namely, in the last flight, if we look here, Ship 29 had heat shield tiles and it had a thermal material beneath of those tiles. Whereas in this next launch, the heat shield tiles are significantly thicker, as well as there is an ablative material underneath those tiles. What is an ablative material? An ablative material is something that if I paint on the surface of my bottle, and then I take a torch, right? I blast this, little flakes are gonna come off as heat. It's called ablation. And so what the aspiration for this mission is, all the missions for this year are not to deliver payloads, but to collect data, to try to understand how is it that we can make the largest vehicle in human history fly and aspirationally fly reusably. So solving the heat shield problem is a fundamental issue there. Now, what about recovery? This is really where things get exciting. In the last launch, the booster landed safely in the Gulf of Mexico, and it propulsed down, it pushed up the Starship. When they disconnected, they had stage separation. The booster then turned around, performed a maneuver to come back, and then attempted and was quite successful in propulsively orienting itself just above the ocean and then splash down for a soft water touchdown in the ocean. Now that controls might seem very, very easy now because we have the Falcon 9s that can do that. But this is extremely difficult, especially when you talk about the scale of how truly enormous this is. However, this flight, uh, the booster is going to propulse, do its boost back burn, and then it's going to come right back off the coast of Boca Chica. Now, is it going to come right into Boca Chica? Oh, we should all like run for cover. No, no. Every time you have a booster recovery, you do what's called a dogleg maneuver, which means if the landing infrastructure is here, it's going to aim off the coast. So by default, it'll just plunge into the ocean. And then at the last moment, it performs a controls maneuver in order to navigate into position. Now, this will be the largest single object built in human history. And they're going to try to catch it out of the air like the Mechazilla arms in an old Godzilla movie. Or if you've seen the Karate Kid being able to catch a fly out of the air with chopsticks. But there's one other thing that's changed. Now this, what I'm about to talk about is an enormous development in their engines and engine performance. This is the Raptor engine, which is really the extremely difficult technological engineering problem in order to make all this crazy stuff I'm talking about even possibly viable. They've been working on this since 2009. It was first mentioned in the symposium. Over here on the left is the Raptor version 1. It looks like a Christmas tree of plumbing. As a person who used to be a mechanic on fluid systems, this is called a nightmare. You don't want this at all. There's an enormous number of things that can go wrong, that can break. And on the right-hand side, we can see Raptor version 2. It's much more clean, much more elegant. And here, those are initial renders. These are what they look like in real life. But these are the engines flying on this next flight test. But something that we won't see in this next flight test, but something that was just unveiled this last week. Thank you so much, Melinda. Something was just unveiled this last week is that the third Raptor engine has officially been unveiled. And it's a bit simpler. If you don't know engineering, or you don't know physics, or you don't know fluid systems or cryogenics or propulsion, it might seem like, okay, they just cut a bunch of stuff off. Except attempting to do this with what's called a full flow staged combustion engine, before I saw this photograph, I thought this was impossible. It turns out that I just didn't know what impossible is. This is a feat of engineering that only time will be able to tell. All rocketry textbooks after this was published need to have a new edition. In terms of performance, this engine is unparalleled compared in terms of thrust to weight than any engine in history. This is like the difference between having a coal engine, a steam engine, and an electric engine. This is just a completely different paradigm of propulsion efficiency. With that previous engine, it might be possible for us to build a space industry. With this new engine, it's not just possible, but very, very low cost to make each one because it's very, very simple to make them. There's not as much. It doesn't take as much time to assemble. And as a mechanic as well, oh my goodness, I would much rather work on the newest one than the prior ones. But we're talking about IFT-5 or Integrated Flight Test 5. This is a very short animation of what we can expect, and hopefully, if they catch it appropriately, what we may see whenever this does happen. However, I do want to point out there's no guarantee this will happen. This is the first time we've ever attempted this in human history, so there's a very good chance that this does fail. and that the launch infrastructure itself is damaged, potentially catastrophically.
That worst case scenario.
Yeah. Okay, I want to point to something that's perhaps helpful here. You guys will notice these are the chopstick arms right here, kind of like that giant Mechazilla I was talking about. They're actually two small pins located underneath underneath these arms that are used for controls. Those pins are what are used to attempt to catch the vehicle. However, I was just speaking with the engineer that's in charge of this system on the tower the other day, and he was telling me that the aspiration is even if they miss catching with the pins, hopefully the arms will be able to hit the tower as a backup. So even if it misses the very small catching pins, hopefully the booster is caught and can be successfully saved for future testing. Any questions, by the way? Questions? No? No? Yo.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
So I've never actually seen the water drone landing, but I think about it. So the 3D printers that are in the adjacent room, like if I'm calibrating the surface to be flat, you know, there's like an auto cal that allows like a skewed surface.
Right.
It's an aquatic drone that, do you have any ability to adjust the landing frame? Or is that?
Oh, yes. So this Will just asked a really fantastic question, which is that if a booster is coming in to land, if you're on a drone ship, you can kind of anticipate, let me know if I'm off here. You can kind of anticipate what the angle of the drone ship is, what its yaw and pitch are. However, this booster is not trying to land on a barge. It's going to try to be caught by the very tower that it launched out of. So the ship is going to attempt to be caught by those arms and then placed right back on the launch stand. So it's like Starship hardware flying, and then the SpaceX hardware attempting to catch it, utilizing LiDAR.
And then I would be tempted.
I see, sir.
Something equivalent to, you know, in the front end of your car, you have compression springs and then a fluid, you know.
Yes,
something.
yes.
Those arms are presumably spring loaded and pneumatic loaded, or?
Hydraulically loaded.
Okay.
So the arms actuation horizontal is electrically driven, but hydraulic along latitude.
Oh.
Yeah. Yes, sir. You have a question.
It has its pins. It was
Yes.
to catch onto the, I guess what you want to say, clamp, I guess it's just the layman's term.
Yeah.
Clamp, right?
Right.
But those pins are made to support the weight of that.
Yes.
cylinder.
Yes.
Okay, and you said, well, the flaps, well, you want to call them the flaps, you can call it. If it doesn't catch by the pins, are the flaps strong enough to support the weight
Yes.
of the body itself?
Yes, they are. Actually, those are the largest cast titanium structure in human history.
Because these flaps at the same time also adjust how it's coming down, right? When it's
Correct.
It's coming down, so this is for, after something like this, you know.
That's exactly correct. For scale, by the way, actually our tables are pretty appropriate here. One of those would fit almost perfectly within the center area of these tables. They are absolutely enormous and very heavy titanium. But yes, that is exactly the idea. Can they support that load? Yes, they are designed to.
You're not actually supposed to catch on the flaps.
Precisely.
Secondary backup for.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Any other questions? Those are fantastic. Any other thoughts? Okay, we'll keep going. So when will Starship Test 5 happen? It is currently scheduled for between the end of August and beginning of September. If you know about rocket testing, it's not at all like flying on an airplane. Just because there is a date scheduled doesn't mean it'll fly that day. But the FAA is currently the primary constraint. Both the ship and booster have been static fired and are ready. What we're seeing right here is actually from last week, or maybe two or 3 days ago. This is ship 30 that is being used for this next launch. This is a static fire. What we're currently seeing is 3 vacuum level engines. Vacuum level engines are quite a bit larger in their bell diameter due to the differences in pressure in outer space. And now we have the sea level engines, which have just turned on. In actual flight, these won't turn on until they're actually in space. Yeah. Okay. So that's really what I had in terms of update for Integrated Flight Test 5. Are there any questions and any comments, please?
So
Yes, sir.
And again, my own ignorance, but like, you know, so you're spring loading the drop mechanism, which is not pneumatic, it's
Hydraulic.
hydraulic.
Yes.
Um,
Well, it's a hydraulic system is utilizing hydraulics and pneumatics.
okay.
Yeah.
And the expansion contraction of everything packed into there, so you have basically a rocket launcher coming against the side. of
Yeah,
it.
that's
And
exactly
the,
right.
Like expansion contraction dynamics of that press.
Yes.
Is there concern like going outside the
Oh, yeah.
bandwidth?
Yeah. Let's say that there's like an operating, I don't know if everybody heard, but Will was asking a question about when the chopsticks are able to catch the vehicle. What's the major concern really?
The hydraulics, hydraulics you call it. Again, I'm confusing the terminology, but like
Oh, you're good.
if there's expansion of that fluid as something hot comes against the side of it,
Right.
is that going to throw it outside of the ranges? Maybe
Oh, yes.
some ring seals.
Yes.
Is that-
I think you hit it right on the nose there. What I would say is that there's an ideal operating envelope in terms of the velocity of the descent of the vehicle. And so if the vehicle descends too quickly, then the force on those arms will likely cave underneath the immense force of the booster returning. If it's gentle, then it should be just fine. But this is going to be crazy. If it comes in very, very fast, we may see those hydraulics just burst under the pressure. Hydraulic fluid will be everywhere. If it comes in too fast, even faster than that, we may even see the arms snap off, the booster tip over, and a bunch of fireballs. So as is often said in experimental rocket launches like this, which by the way is unmanned, no humans here, excitement is guaranteed whether it's a successful launch or not. And most importantly for the team to collect the data, to be able to have this more reliably happen on a schedule that is similar to what we anticipate with airlines. Anyway, thank you guys very much for your time.